Welcome. Today I thought I would walk you through a process video. These photos are from when my family have had our vaccinations, and this black and white MixIn from the January-February catalogue spoke to me because of the little sunbursts, I guess you might call them, that to some degree reminded me of the coronavirus emblem. Some of the things that I'll be using at the time of recording this video, this stamp set and thin cut set is current, and so I have stamped some band-aids. I'm not quite sure which of these colours I will use. I just had some scraps of shortbread, and I've got a tissue box, although may or may not use that. Definitely the sanitizer I'm going to use, and one of the products that I wanted to play with was the square window Slimlines. So it's somewhat product driven in terms of products that I wanted to use. Some of these are old. I've stamped off a whole bunch of Corona stamps that I will use for embellishing, and these are from a number of different Corona or virus or stay-at-home stamp sets. I've just tried to pick the ones that aren't necessarily about staying at home. I don't know too much. I'll probably use these on the borders, and I am thinking I'll somehow incorporate this. I haven't got any small photos, and I do have one photo missing, but maybe I'll use that to do the embellishing. That's where my thoughts are right now. So I'll speed it up and give you a little bit of narrative over the top as I mature my thoughts. That's all I know at the moment. So I'm starting off using this MixIn, and I'm using the white base with the black print. You will see from the other piece at the top that the reverse side is a black base with white print, which I'll use a little bit later. I have cut them down to 11 3/4 in height, just because I want a little border around it. I've got 4.25 width on the left hand side. The right hand side is exactly 4 inches because that fits the slimline piece that I want to use. I'm now trying to size up the black piece, which I'm going to use as a base for my sort of header, and I've cut that down. I made the piece just big enough that I've cut that I can use that to matte or highlight another photo as well. I've already pre-matted the Not Today Corona in some of the glacier, and now I start to play around with my photos. I haven't actually used any sketch at all for this, so I've just used the borders on the right, and I'm just trying to really now fit my photos and embellishments, sort of having a bit of a play, auditioning pieces a little bit here and there. And I have to admit that in the course of doing this, I'm normally very good at making decisions, but I did place some restrictions on myself, limiting myself to the one sheet of MixIn, and so that has put a few barriers in the way along the way, and so I fiddled probably a lot more with this layout than I normally would. I've got that leftover piece of the black base with the white, which is I'm going to use behind that photo with the details on it, which is the booking information for my kids' vaccinations, which were sometime after adults could get them here in Australia. I'm still not 100% happy, and I definitely don't like those band-aids up the top, but it was really just auditioning a few things. I decide that that black piece needs to come down the bottom, but that'll mean moving my photos around as well, because the booking is for my son's photo and his photo was at the top, so I've now moved that around and they pretty much stay there, and I'm happy with that. So I'm now looking at the photo of when I went and got my second vaccination, and again it's fairly tightly cropped, and I want to keep on the little band-aid that I'm showing, the selfie I took in the car, but I am thinking that I might need to matte it. So it's amazing what you can do with a photo. Initially I've just cropped a little bit off the side, which left it more of a rectangular shape, and then I decide, well, I can cut another 1/8 off the top just so that it is evenly matted, and I'm just trying all the different colours that I've got there. I've got the reverse side of the glacier as well as some black. Just trying to decide now whether I'll need mattes around the other photos, but they're a fairly strong contrast to the light glacier side, so I later decide that that's not needed. I then start to look how this slimline might work. When I cut the slimline square piece, I have actually also inserted the dies that come with it that make the inserts come out in scallops. So for now I'm placing those inside, but it does look quite heavy. I'm not really sure about that and not really sure how I'll use them, but just playing around. You'll notice I've got one photo there that is just a blank photo mat, and that's because I know I've got another photo of my mum that was taken when we had our vaccinations, and I've forgotten to print that one or couldn't find it. The zip strip here, I have played around a little bit off camera. Wanted something at the base to provide a bit of interest, and I'm now trying to make that 12 inches work across the photos. And as I said, I did fiddle around a lot beforehand about the placement of photos so that I can stretch that 12 inches across the two pieces, which one is about 6 inches, and then I've got about another 8 inches to play with. So by positioning my photos, I know that I can make that 12 inches stretch across there. Of course, I'm using my trusty non-stick scissors to cut that. I then go to my favourite thing to do when I want to add just another little bit of interest that's simple, and just a small strip of one of the or cardstock colours that I use, which is black. A bit of a 3/8 of an inch girl, sometimes use a 1/4. And I know that'll work for me, so I've just placed it down for a moment because I now want to see how the rest of the embellishments are going to work. Some of those I'm starting to get there, but these band-aids really trouble me. I think it's the size of them. I definitely want to include them because the shortbread, which is sort of the band-aid colour here, matches my shirt, so that just brings out that colour. And I've also remembered that looking at the photo that I have of my mum, I can actually cut that down to a 3x4. And so I've swapped that in because it'll give me a bit more room. And I'm starting to think about the background, so I've grabbed another favourite stamp set, the Perfectly Imperfect. I haven't grabbed my stamping mat, and I probably should have put the foam underneath, but I just wanted something subtle to break up the glacier cardstock, just to add a little bit more texture. So I'm going for it. It doesn't show up very well on camera. I will show you towards the end of the video where you can see it a little bit closer, but it's very, very subtle, but it's just enough to break it up before I commit and stick the photos down. So I've grabbed my glacier ink and I'm just doing that around those sort of larger patches of blank there. These band-aids are continuing to trouble me, but I'm going to commit to the photos now that I've got that stamping background done and get those down. I don't know whether I've already mentioned, I am usually a very quick decision maker, but because I put some boundaries on myself with this layout in terms of using just the one bit of paper and the shape of the photos, I've had to fiddle it a lot, which is a lot more. I'm about to stick this one down and I realised I haven't stuck that black strip down, so I'm doing that first, getting it ready to stick on both sides. Of course, I've got plenty of the black, so I'm not as restricted as I was, so I can stick that right across. And then I notice how crooked that zip strip is using my trusty tweezers there. I'm not much for one for putting ink on the edge of paper, but there was just a little burr. I must have had a blade that wasn't quite sharp, and there was a little burr on the paper and it was annoying me. So I've just grabbed my nearest ink, black ink, and I have just run the ink along the edges of the black just so those white burr lines don't show up. And then I'm pretty much all committed with the photos on that right hand side. So I'm going back to the left hand side, and I am liking the little spread joy not germs. I do like that. I'm wondering if it should be on the other side, trying to think about where my triangular cluster will be. Wondering whether I need to have a cluster where the interchange or the between the zip strips and that right hand border. But I'm going to go ahead and do the stamping on the left hand page in those blank areas as well, just so that I can then commit to the photos and pop those down. Again, they're very light, you can't see that. So you'll notice in a minute that I do fiddle with laying these two 3x4 photos out, or photo position holders, and that's because my mum's holding up her card in her hand right in that bottom right hand corner, so I can't afford for them to overlap too much. Just going to put a little bit more stamping on the left hand side of where that photo will go so that I don't have to stamp around that. And then I go back to this troublesome corner over here, and it's only really troublesome because I have put that zip strip down and I've got to make it stretch across, and I'm trying to get all three of those. I keep wondering whether I should matte the photo itself in white, and then off camera I quickly do that by the magic of stopping and starting my film. Pop that extra little black strip along so that will complete it. Grab my trusty scissors to be able to quickly cut that off. So now I'm going to give some attention to that slimline frame on the right hand side, and I don't actually like the black insets inside. I think it makes it look too heavy, so I've gone and cut some glacier versions to see what that's like. So I'm just sort of alternating them, working out which embellishments look best on the black or the glacier, and then I'm almost ready to commit, so I'm just quickly fussy cutting. Now unfortunately I'm a little bit off camera here, but you'll notice that I'm holding the scissors and only turning the embellishment, so that's the best way to fussy cut. I don't mind a bit of fussy cutting, but I do like the thin cuts because just for speed. So I'm going to go back up to that top now and see what I can do with those band-aids. I'm just trying to work out how I can feature that title and still have a cluster of embellishments there. And I do have to think about a journaling box, which I think comes up very soon. There it is. So, and that actually just adds some nice weight to that title, and I'll be able to add my journaling in that box. So back down to this right hand cluster, and that placement of that band-aid is pivotal in me making some decisions there, because I start to see it as a piece of washi tape instead of a band-aid, and so I do the same on the right hand side, and then coming up I decide that yes, this could look like washi tape, and that's the best placement of it rather than trying to include it in a cluster. So because I do that, I then decide that bottom doesn't need to be there. Maybe I can drop down this slimline frame, whether it be right to the bottom or in the centre. You'll notice I've also taken away the black and just let that paper shine through. So, lesson learned, make sure you always plug your phone into the charger while you're filming a very long film. So we've jumped forward a little bit. I changed my mind on this one. I decided I wanted more of this lovely pattern paper to shine through. So I have just put some ink around the embellishments, the stamp thin cuts there. Wanted to keep the blue just to keep a little bit more of a pop of colour there. Managed to find a place to put the band-aids to sort of make them look like they're a bit like the washi tape position. And I've also hidden that where I was running short and struggling with my photos, when I pulled the black ones out from there, I popped one in here. I'm pretty happy with that. I'll just lift it up and show you. It's still stuck to my mat here. It's very subtle, and it's quite bright light here, natural light, but you'll see the stamping around here. I think probably if I was doing it again, just recently I've discovered that second generation Lagoon is a really great substitute for Glacier when you don't want it to be so subtle. But probably I'm happy with that. In this instance, I might have been sorry if it was too bright. So a little bit on this side too, just around the photos. I'll get that last photo printed up of my mum, and I'll probably stamp some little dates in here because I think it's, you know, sort of important to remember, because people will say, well, when, you know, in 10, 25 years from now, when we're talking about having our vaccinations, we'll be trying to remember how far it was between them, and I won't probably have all the room in there, enough room in there to have all the details. But I'm really quite happy with that. I'm tempted to put black lines along the bottom. It's a bit around the edge. It's the one thing I'm sort of into at the moment, particularly when there's sort of a black highlight there. Might decide to do that, might just leave this one for now. So I hope you like the finished product.